Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. But let's move on to the third items plural, which is SearchGPT, and then kind of the Google antitrust and Apple, and what's sort of going to happen in the near term with the Google-Apple relationship and Apple search engine, Apple's relationship with OpenAI, and its Apple Intelligence. So just real quickly, I got access to SearchGPT about a week ago or so, whenever they sort of broadened it out, which apparently they've turned off, meaning they're not like letting more people in. I guess they have enough. I saw somebody who was posted.
Yeah, sure. I'm not able to get in at this point.
Right. So I have access to it. It looks exactly like the screenshots. Basically, there's a single column format. There's a pane on the left that you can open up, and it has it can show images, and it can show different sources. There's a very heavy publisher presence on there. Links are clearly marked. There's publisher logos and all kinds of stuff. So it's very publisher friendly in a certain way. And my kind of informal, I haven't done any sort of systematic testing of queries, with the exception of local a little bit. My informal sort of testing of it, my conclusion is that it's pretty good. It does a pretty good job today of dealing with informational queries. And local is kind of the weak area. It gives you local results. So if you ask for, best brunch in Buffalo, New York, it'll give you a bunch of restaurants. They may not be quite as good as Google, but you get restaurants, you get results, or whatever the query is. They are populating the SERP with stuff, and it's credible, but it's not as good as Google. So, it has a way to go, and by vertical, it's different. The sort of quality is different, but it's pretty good today, and it has the UI is preferable to me to the Google UI. I mean, I'm a critic of the sort of Las Vegas style cacophony of stuff that's showing up. So it's a cleaner UI. There's no ads, and it also has the advantage of being able to ask follow-up questions, which in theory you're supposed to be able to do on Google, or at some point you will on Google. So, for example, if you do a hotel search and you say, I want 4.2 and above star hotels in New York, and you get some set of results, you can refine. You could say Midtown Manhattan, or whatever your refinement is. You can do that without sort of initiating a new query exactly, although you might argue that this is the same behavior. And so you can drill further and further down on that initial set of results, which I think is a good experience in many cases, where you don't want to initiate a new search and then have to go back through.
Right. So it theoretically understands context, although I was looking at some private research yesterday where they had compared local results across Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, and I guess some other one. And what they found was that as you did these follow-up searches, the hallucinations became more pronounced. More pronounced. And that the initial stuff was pretty good, particularly in Perplexity. I don't know, or one of them, I don't know, maybe ChatGPT. But it was just interesting that as you went further,
it was probably Perplexity, because they're licensing Yelp.
Right. And maybe Claude wouldn't even give you an answer, just sort of said, I don't know anything about local at this point.
Claude often it does that. It will punt in certain situations where it doesn't have data.
But he pointed out that as the context evolved, it got worse and worse in terms of the accuracy.
So that's interesting. Obviously I haven't done any systematic approach to it,
so I know we talked about this obviously local is an area where Google has a huge advantage. We've talked about this in the past. They have the best.
It is the advantage. It is the advantage that they have, I think.
And the only company that I can see that has Bing has worked on it and has a somewhat of a decent knowledge graph. Facebook, they've come and gone again. Apple seems to me to be the one company that's seriously attempting to build a knowledge graph, a worldwide knowledge graph that could compete with Google. I have a question for you. The other July 24th, Apple announced that they would make Apple Maps available on the web. And then July 25th, ChatGPT announced SearchGPT. Do you think that SearchGPT will now scrape Apple Maps data for the local stuff they announced?
Well, so the answer is probably yes, because these companies are sucking up whatever data they can get access to. So independent of the relationship between the two companies, um, you know, I would think the default position is we're gonna it's the beg for forgiveness position. We're gonna take everything we can and see who sues us. I assume that there's been some explicit conversation between Apple and OpenAI about these kinds of things, and so your thesis, I think, is which you can articulate, is that these are going to be enormously valuable things that can go be incorporated into Search GPT. Is that?
I think it is. I mean, I think Apple is likely a choice for ChatGPT to offer local through. I mean, I think that clearly Google's not going to partner with them. Bing, they may partner with Bing, and Bing may offer up some data. But I think the most obvious choice for navigation and mapping is Apple at this point.
Well, I think certainly for any kind of mapping or navigation, Apple Maps is now the number two, and preferred by Apple users in many instances.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about antitrust, which has been a favorite topic, obviously. So I think we had, I don't want to be smug, but the liability finding is something that we talked about and I predicted. Now the hard question is what happens at the remedy phase, which is going to start in September. And we don't need to sort of review all the potential remedies. I think we're going to see the end of the default search relationship, at least technically. That will be perceived that was perceived by the court as an obstacle to Apple creating its own search engine and competition for Google, because the incentive to keep sucking at the teat of the Google payments was just too great for Apple. The temptation.
Right.
Was
Although
too
the
great.
court, I mean, Cantor made clear in an interview recently, Cantor's the DOJ lead on this, that the problem with just that would be that users might still choose Google and Apple would be out the $20 billion and nothing would change. And he made it clear that he did not think that was an adequate resolution.
It's insufficient, right? That is not enough. I would predict that the court will order some sort of divestiture of something, whether it's Chrome or the. Yeah, go ahead.
And if that's the case, I would predict it takes 3 to 4 years to resolve.
Right. So let's assume that Judge Mehta which is a great name, or Mehta, depending on how you pronounce it, which is a great name for this case, or a great judge name in this case. Let's assume that he takes a bold course and orders some divestiture here, kills the default search relationship, and then orders some divestiture of Android or Chrome or both, right? And so then you enter your scenario, which is there's an immediate appeal. Google asks, depending upon what the trial court judge has ordered, for some stay of any structural remedies during the pendency of the appeal. So nothing changes hypothetically during the appeal process, which could last, as you said, 3 to 5 years.
And one has to believe that Google will milk their default position as long as possible, because it's very profitable for them, even at the extreme prices they're paying. It's still profitable because they're so big, so efficient. They make money on it. So one assumes, who knows, maybe somehow it'll have to end sooner. But if the appeals defer everything, that gives 3 years of money of Google being in the same position. And if you look at Apple's hardware evolution, basically only the iPhone 15 Pro and any new hardware will be compatible with their AI stuff, which means basically a full replacement cycle before they have AI features.
Which is what, 3 years? Which is
3 to 4 years, about the same time frame.
Yeah.
And if you look at the evolution of search, like, is search going to become AI search, like SearchGPT? It seems like search is going there. I think Apple is betting that we don't know what search is going to be. We're going to sort of take 3 years to take a look. And in the meantime, we're going to slowly release these features out to our user base in a way that makes sense for the user base. I mean, so it's hard to know in that context. You've thought that the logic for Apple was inexorable towards a search engine. I would suggest that it may or
Well,
may not.
I think Apple is ambivalent about a search engine because I think they
Right.
know what it would cost and what it would take to truly compete, and I think that they have a lot of ambivalence about spending that money and devoting those resources.
And
Uh,
in the end, they still, even though it's going to cost them $6 billion more a year beyond what they're spending now, they would then maybe capture up to 30% of the searches. It may not still give them enough volume to compete with Google because ultimately it's search volume that
what
drives quality,
well,
which drives efficiency, which drives profit
and
and
also
ads.
clicks, right? Also clicks.
That's what I
And
mean, right?
so, I mean, the reason that Google, I mean, according to the DOJ antitrust trial exhibits, one of the primary motivations for Google building Chrome was to get clickstream data on users, to watch users as they went across the internet. That's why Google keeps prompting me to sign into Chrome wherever I go, is to watch my behavior and get, some visibility on that holistic purchase journey. So, um, you know, arguably, Apple wouldn't have enough of that click data, and that's what Satya Nadella testified to.
Right.
Is
And in the hearings, Apple said Microsoft couldn't, they would have to pay us more than 100% of their profit and they still wouldn't be good enough. And we don't want something for our customers that isn't good enough, which is
right.
the
So,
other issue. So to
yeah,
me, Apple is ambivalent right now. They're sort of spreading their bets across the board with
yeah.
ChatGPT and one presumes SearchGPT and waiting to see how the court case comes out. All of that stuff is likely to take 3 years. It would take 3 years for Apple to build the infrastructure.
Right, and it's really kind of a lifetime in a way. I mean, so anything can happen. I mean, it's business as usual, and I mean, I think it's unclear how the election will affect the resolution of this case because, of course, in the Microsoft instance, uh, Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson said Microsoft needs to be broken up into two or three parts.
Right.
And then that was reversed on appeal. And then when George W. Bush was elected president in 2000, he came in and they settled the case. His Justice Department settled the case. Nothing happened to Microsoft. And so
Although they did behave a little nicer after that, and they did
yeah.
give a little more breathing room to Google.
But
and
nothing
the
like
irony is that Google came out of that.
yeah, nothing like the divestiture scenario that was being contemplated at the trial level.
Right.
So whatever happens in the election could impact this case because it will be the next administration, whether that's Harris or Trump, God forbid, that deals with this. And so it's really hard to predict how that will impact the ultimate resolution. But in the interim, we're likely to see business as usual, and for marketers, it's going to be no change probably from what you're doing
for the next 3 years, right?
Yeah, for the next
or at
3
least
years.
insignificant change.
But I think the evolution of search and the experience of search and what we call search and people's expectations does change. I think what we're in this, even if Google emerges kind of unscathed or relatively unscathed, we are in the process of a transition from what search has been to something else. And it may be the case that that's a kind of bifurcation between informational queries that get addressed by these AI like experiences and something which is more commercial and transactional, which Google holds on to because it's got better data. I don't know, but I think 5 years from now, search will not look as it has looked for the last 15, 20.
That's a great way to conclude this. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, well, I think something is changing. It's just the precise contours of that are unclear at this point, and it will be fascinating to see how gutsy this judge is. I mean, this is a real, to use the sort of vulgar expression, come to Jesus moment here, and we'll see what this judge does. If he's gonna slap Google on the wrist, or if he's really gonna go for it and say Google is a problem. We need to open up the market. It's going to take divestiture to do that. We're going to cut off Android. We're going to cut off Chrome. and and go forward. We'll see.
It'll be a fun ride. I'm there ringside the whole way.
Yes. All right.
How's that for a sports analogy?
Yeah. And on that sporting note, we will be back next week, hopefully with David. And in the interim, tell your friends. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.